North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub. Pardon me. North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub and the Northwest Highlands Geopark, what they do, how they can help and guide you, and also help break down the idea of net zero and green tourism into more digestible and actionable chunks through things like best practice and case studies. Because I don't know about you guys, but I work better with practical examples, so that's helpful. Working alongside Kathy, one of my key roles moving forward is to lead on green tourism and net zero projects and the engagement for this. As many of you will have heard about our consultations that we did in Caithness and Sutherland for the tourism recovery strategy, a lot of key green priorities came from this. So what we want to do moving forward is raise awareness across the sector of how tourism can contribute positively to the net zero targets. You know, not only encouraging visitors to be more conscious of their behaviour and the way that they travel, but ensuring that businesses and community organisations, you know, have access to the key information and resources that encourage things like, you know, energy efficiency, food waste reduction, sustainable supply chains, that type of thing. Another key priority is that we want, you know, a more sustainable tourism destination. So, you know, this is where Venture North have kind of started to build collaborations and be involved with projects with groups like Sustrans, the Far North Line, and developing mountain biking in Scotland. It's just to make sure that, you know, we push forward that, you know, tourists have the best options when they come and can be more sustainable and responsible around the region. But yeah, as I said, the key output for this event is, you know, to encourage businesses and communities to use the resources that we have in the area, and, you know, a wider understanding of how they can implement change that can help not only visitors be more responsible, but, you know, adapt their businesses' behaviour, ways of working and practices to be more sustainable and carbon conscious. It will help break down, you know, what may seem overwhelming into more understandable and actionable things that you can actually use. So yeah, I'm going to stop presenting now and hand you over to our first speaker, Maren, who is the Senior Development Manager at High, and she's going to talk a little bit about the national net zero picture and the support that High can offer, with examples of implemented change. So Maren, I'll let you start presenting.
Good, thank you very much. I shall try and see if that works. Good. Hopefully everyone's able to see that.
I'm able to see that. Yeah, it looks good.
Excellent, fantastic. So yeah, well, thank you very much for inviting me along today. Pleasure to be here on such a nice and sunny day, although I think we all want to be out there rather than kind of like sitting inside. So I'll be quick. So before starting to look at the kind of like theme set for the day, I just wanted to provide you with a very brief and quick introduction to Highlands and Islands Enterprise, although I do fully appreciate that most of you will be already fully aware of kind of like what we do. So well, Highlands and Islands Enterprise is a, hang on, let me switch the slides here, is the economic and community development agency for the north and west of Scotland. We help to build inclusive and sustainable economies across the Highlands and Islands by working with businesses, communities, social enterprises of all sizes and actually across all sectors. We work through a network of local offices, and some of you will have been probably in touch with my local colleagues. And our support includes providing advice, funding, as well as running events and workshops to meet our customers' needs. Tourism obviously plays an important role in the Highlands and Islands region, with an average pre-COVID spend of 1.5 billion across the whole of the region. There are about 3,200 registered tourism businesses, and tourism jobs kind of like represent up to 43% of the workforce in some of the high area. I believe in Caithness and Sutherland, the percentage of tourism jobs lies at about 15%. With tourism playing such an important role, we actively support tourism development on a local level, but we also support strategic development on a national level. The topics we're talking about today have been on the agenda for quite a while. We started to face visitor management challenges pre-COVID, and climate change has also been a priority. Work in both areas gained momentum during COVID recovery and with COP26 and changed visitor patterns playing an enabling role to actually build back greener. So I'm trying today kind of like to give you a bit of a national overview to tell you of what's going on a strategic national level, which all kind of like sits behind of what is then kind of like being delivered locally. So this space, as you've all picked up already, I'm sure, is busy to say the least. There's a plethora of strategies out there, there's action plans, there's various stakeholder groups, and these have all emerged aiming to address both issues, visitor management on a more local level, but also climate action as part of the need to reduce global emissions of greenhouse gases and keep global warming to under 2 degrees. Looking at climate change from a national tourism perspective, there are two current key initiatives that drive activity. There's one, the Glasgow Declaration, and there's Destination Net Zero. Globally, tourism CO2 emissions grew at least 60% from 2005 to 2016, with transport-related CO2 causing 5% of global emissions in 2016. Scotland's legislation sets a target date for net zero emissions of all greenhouse gases by 2045. So tourism, like any other sector really, is now specifically looking at how carbon emissions can be reduced to meet these targets. Over the last couple of years, many activities and initiatives have been developed to support the tourism sector on its journey to net zero and encourage the sector to commit actually to take action. At COP26, we saw the launch of the Glasgow Declaration, which has attracted various signatories across Scotland in DMOs and businesses. The declaration is a pledge for any tourism stakeholder, which seeks to lead and align action across the tourism industry. It's a global initiative building on the UN sustainability goals. Signatories are committing to deliver climate action plans within 12 months and also to commit and implement these. And signatories also agree to actually report publicly against their progress. The Glasgow Declaration actually uses an approach of addressing 5 key pathways, they call it, or themes. These are kind of like measuring, i.e. create a baseline and then continue to measure carbon emissions on a continuous basis. Decarbonize, meaning taking actually specific action to reduce carbon emissions from operations. And then there's another one in there, regeneration. And that is all about protecting the ecosystems and biodiversity, collaboration, sharing knowledge, risks, solutions, and finance, i.e. making a commitment to actually put sufficient resources behind delivering the plans. So why do I mention the Glasgow Declaration specifically? Well, regardless of becoming a signatory or not, the 5 pathways are actually a very, very useful way to guide climate action planning on all levels of tourism development. And I think kind of like all organizations and communities can actually relate to these pathways and therefore help kind of like delivery on the ground. So what else is happening in terms of tourism climate action across kind of like a national level? Climate action planning and delivery has started, as I said before, momentum as part of a program called Destination Net Zero, which is a key strand of the Scottish Tourism Recovery Programme. So it's a key strand of the recovery efforts after COVID. Destination Net Zero is delivered by the enterprise agencies, Visit Scotland and other partners on behalf of STURC, which is the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group. The programme received funding from Scottish Government and delivers a mix of funding for capital projects, destination support, and business advice and research. As part of the Destination Net Zero programme, partners are looking to create baselines. A business service, for example, was conducted to gauge the current attitudes and behaviors towards carbon neutral economy and identify barriers businesses face on their journey to net zero. The survey showed that businesses are concerned about climate change and are aware of Scottish Government targets. However, cost and practical limitations, as you will all know, were cited as the main barriers to action, with almost half of the businesses responding, stating that they either had already applied for funding or intending to do so. Carbon literacy was noted as another barrier. Going forward, Destination Net Zero partners are currently looking into developing an action plan for the public sector, which seeks to identify gaps in the support for the industry, foster collaboration, a collaborative approach, and avoid duplication in an already busy support landscape. As part of the Destination Net Zero program, High supported a range of net zero projects across the High region. Funding was provided to support key tourism offers in greening their operations, such as the new Nevis Range development and the Lake Ski Resort. Active travel offers were created, as well as enabling communities to install EV charging points. Product development around EV and e-bike journeys is another project supported by High under Destination Net Zero. The climate action agenda, however, is of course one that applies to every personal business sector. High are actively engaged with all of our clients on their journey to the goals highlighted within the national policy and strategy to reach net zero in carbon emissions. Net zero also features highly in many of High's wider tourism engagement programs. Well, I'll leave it at this in terms of net zero and climate change. There is at the end of the presentation, there will be a list with useful resources which provide starting points for businesses and communities for their journey to net zero. I'm conscious of time, so let me quickly turn to another aspect of sustainability, which is the one of visitor management. A topic close and of high importance to many communities and businesses across Scotland who have felt the impact of increasing visitor numbers and change in visitor characteristics and behavior. Other speakers today will, I'm sure, provide some local context. So let's look again at the national initiatives and developments in this space. Organisations such as Visit Scotland, Nature Scot, the national parks, local authorities, enterprise and agencies are all continuing to jointly work to address the challenges. Activities include awareness-raising campaigns and the encouragement of appropriate behaviour through visitor guidance, motorhome camping guidance, and Scottish Outdoor Access Code promotion. Boots on the ground through the provision of ranger services was a successful operation last year, and as far as I'm aware, ranger provision will continue this year at similar levels. Local authorities are currently in the process of developing strategic infrastructure development plans, moving from firefighting to a mid-long-term approach, enabling them to make the case for appropriate funding to support infrastructure development and maintenance. The Rural Tourism Infrastructure Fund will continue to run, with the local infrastructure plans guiding investment. As part of High's COVID recovery support, we have delivered the Community-led Tourism Infrastructure Fund, which helped communities to build back better and provide the required local infrastructure to cope with increased demand. And although the Community-led and Tourism Infrastructure Fund has come to a close, we will continue to support development to our ongoing discretionary funding. Both visitor management and climate change agendas have been accelerated through the COVID recovery period, and High will continue to support through our business program, client engagement and community support. High's tourism programs, which all feature climate change and visitor management alongside economic development, include our tourism podcast, Tune into Tourism, There is a Let's Grow Adventure development program, which is specifically for adventure tourism businesses. There is our Communities Leading a Tourism program, and we also currently provide financial support of DMOs. Sorry, this was literally a whistle-stop tour, and I probably have only covered a fraction of what there is to say. I hope, however, that I was able to provide a bit of a wider national overview to set the scene for the other speakers and also to trigger some thoughts and discussions today. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for that, Maren, and I appreciate that you only had a short amount of time to cover quite a lot, so I hope everyone got valuable things from that. I don't know if David has joined us from the Caithness Chamber of Commerce.
No, there's no word from David just now, so.
No, that's all right. Okay, well, I'll just move on to, we'll now hear from Joan Laurie, who is the Hub Project Manager at the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub, who will hopefully go over some current community projects, climate literacy, and some practical examples. So Joan, I'll let you take over from here.
Make sure that I have myself off mute. Oh, actually, is this displaying properly?
Looks good to me.
Okay. So, hello. Some of you might know me already as being the development manager for Thurso Community Development Trust, but I'm actually here as the project manager for the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub, and I'll just explain very quickly what the relationship is. So, the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub is one of the first in a network of regional climate action hubs that are being set up across Scotland. And the aim of these hubs is that they are led by community owned and led organisations. One of the reasons being is that in Scotland, previously in terms of climate action funding, so community climate action funding, things were funded by the Climate Challenge Fund. And there was a huge amount of grassroots projects that went on that were great, but there wasn't a kind of sustainability. And it's also, just as Maren had said, there's a very crowded landscape in terms of support for climate action projects. And it can be difficult to weave your way through who exactly you're going to for support. So this is one of the reasons for the hubs, is that we are that in-between gap between where the Scottish Government is sitting with their targets for reaching net zero by 2045. And we're also in between where a community organisation, a community enterprise, and where communities sit to be able to support and advise communities. So we're funded by the Scottish Government for 3 years. Community owned and led, as I said, we're operated by Thurso Community Development Trust. And the reason that the hub came to Thurso Community Development Trust is because we've got quite evidenced high levels of community engagement across our area. And also we have taken the approach with our organisation of the Trust in embedding climate action in everything that we do. We don't do it as an add-on. We don't do it as something that's you know, a specific project. We just embed it throughout everything that we do. So the aim of the trust, so the aim of the hub rather, is to empower and support community-led climate action. And we're going to be doing that. We're 6 months in as a Pathfinder project. There is ourselves and the Nescan hub, which is serving Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, are the first two that have come online. And there will be a network of regional hubs that's established nationwide across Scotland. And our role is to support community-led climate action, and however that may be. When we talk about communities, yes, we're probably more meaning specifically community groups, but actually we mean communities. So a community is made up of businesses, it's made up of the public sector, it's made up of lots of different sectors. It's not just a community organisation. And we're there to support communities on their climate action journeys. We're there to educate and provision of carbon literacy training. We're also developing a range of workshops to help people to put together their net zero policies. And we want to celebrate community-led climate action as well. in however that may be, whether that's a business that's linking with a community organisation, however that is, we want to celebrate and make climate action just something that we're all doing, that we're embedding within our daily lives, that we're embedding within our communities. And we also want to encourage collaboration. So whether that's between community organisations to make their projects stronger, whether that's between agencies and community organisations, whether that's between businesses and community organisations, if we collaborate and we work together, then we have there is a greater chance that all of those actions will filter down to our communities, to the individual actions, and that we can do something more to mitigate against climate change. So as I said, we're supporting and encouraging community-led climate action. So we will be starting from April, we are delivering our own carbon literacy training, which will be available to communities, to community organisations. And I said again, that definition of community can include businesses as well. Carbon literacy training sounds like it's something that's very far away and that might be very sciencey. It's really not. One of the first questions that we ask when we do carbon literacy training is, what was the weather like when you were 10, and what's it like now? And try to just take people on a journey as to understanding the science, understanding the impact. But it is quite light touch, but also provides you with quite a lot of knowledge so that you can understand what the climate crisis is a little bit better. Embedding net zero, so looking at all of those little small actions that we can actually take and taking people on a journey. Just as with the Glasgow Declaration, there is that you don't need to suddenly decide that you are going to completely change the way that your business operates or the way that your community organisation operates. It's more important to take yourself through a journey. So there might be very small little actions that you can start to take that are more climate friendly. And then once you've got those licked, then you can start to move on to the bigger ones. So when we talk about a net zero policy, it's not a policy that needs to be absolutely set in stone of, we're going to have a renewable energy supply, we're going to rip out all of our heating, we're going to do all of this. It can just be, this is what our targets are as we're going along. Actually, first, we've got some food waste. We're going to start to deal with that, and then we can start to move forward into other things. The other role of the hub is really resources and networks. So any form of resources that people might be looking for. One of the key aims of the hub is, particularly for community organisations, is that we're reducing down the amount of bureaucracy in projects. Quite traditionally, a lot of funding has gone to maybe volunteer boards, and there is a lot of paperwork that a community organisation has to do. I frequently say that for us as community organisations, we have all of the paperwork that comes with being a business, and then we generally have all of the paperwork that comes with being a charity as well. And it can be a lot, particularly for volunteers. So we're producing ranges of resources, so every kind of template that you might possibly need to operate a climate action project. And then also access into different networks. We're in a really exciting place at the moment in Highland, where there's not just the Climate Hub, there is also Highland Adapts, which is an initiative which we kind of see as operating as an umbrella over the top of the hub. And Highland Adapts is an initiative which is made up of public sector, private sector, and then communities as well. There is also about to come online in April a £1.5 million project over 3 years of a Highland Community Waste Partnership, of which, with my other hat on as Thurso Community Development Trust, we're one of the organisations who are part of that network, and that's working with Keep Scotland Beautiful and is funded by the Climate Lottery Fund. Which is looking at ways that we can help to reduce waste within communities, from disposables to food waste to creating a greater circular economy. So there's some really exciting things happening in Highland, and certainly when I speak nationwide to other organisations and with the Scottish Government, Highland is leading the way currently, and we're dealing with climate action and trying to approach net zero. The other thing that the hub can help with, and we are currently helping with, is community climate plans. So whether it's looking at within your community, you want to actually establish what are our current carbon emissions? How can we start to measure against that and start to reduce those carbon emissions? And again, that plays into tourism as well. So how are we promoting tourism, and how are we promoting it to be sustainable? And actually, is there carbon emissions that's coming from there, and can we actually reduce those? So in more practical terms, in terms of tourism, we've just put together a few different things that if you're either a business or if you're a community organisation, these kind of small practical things that you could start to think about and how you're operating your organisation or your business, and how you can start to approach hitting net zero with that. So active travel, very obvious one, encouraging people to walk and cycle. But what a lot of people don't think about in terms of active travel is active travel actually just means more mindful travel. It means travel that you need to think a little bit more about. So active travel does actually mean public transport. So a really simple thing that you could do is make sure that, you know, if you're operating a website for your business or your community organisation, do you have instructions on there for how people can get to your business, to your operation via public transport, and encourage that. For community organisations, it might be considering maybe a path project or a walks project, or trying to get a bank of electric bikes available. Using local suppliers, the more that we create localism, the more that we reduce those carbon miles, the more that we stop lots and lots of vans travelling up the A9. So can you actually find a local supplier? Understandably, it might be cost prohibitive, but actually, is there deals that can be done? Could you work with somebody else? Could you collaborate with somebody else to try and take those costs down? Renewable energy doesn't mean that you need to put a wind turbine up in the garden area of your hotel. Are you actually sourcing your electricity and your energy from a 100% renewable energy supplier? That is enough to try and start hitting a net zero target. Doesn't mean that you have to be producing your own energy, but you could just be looking at getting it from a 100% renewable supplier. Sustainability. So how are you looking at potentially circular economy? So maybe you're doing a refresh of rooms and you have duvet covers that you no longer want to use. Actually, is there a charity organisation that could take those from your hands? How is it that you're just embedding sustainability? Just being that little bit more mindful is really actually the key that I would look at as to how you're doing some climate action and how you're trying to hit net zero, is just being more mindful over what you're doing. Local produce. Is there a local producer for what you're looking for? Is there, if you're a business, is there a community garden based near where you are? Are you looking for a particular herb or a particular vegetable to be grown? Go and speak to your community garden. They would probably be more than happy to help and to be able to be that local producer if you can't find a local producer at the moment. I'll try and get through. I'm conscious of my time as well, Kirsty, so but if I'm filling in for David, we'll be okay. Composting is another thing. There may well be community composting facilities. It's also something that communities can start thinking about as community composting. There are various different composting schemes that are starting to emerge. And actually Highland Council and Zero Waste Scotland have been looking at a composting decision tree for community organisations. We're actually working as the hub at the moment with a group in Sutherland who are looking at using wool in composting, because wool has now literally become a waste product. So again, if you're a business, could there be a way that you could approach a community organisation that you could actually team up and look at doing some composting and community composting? Because there has been an almighty rise as well in the number of communities that are looking at growing. And if you are growing things, you need compost for it, which brings me on to growing. So even if you're a business, could you be growing something, even in window boxes? You know, there's so many means into growing. There's lots of us now as community groups throughout the North Highlands and Islands who are looking at putting in sort of vegetable beds in town centres. I know that that's something that we're doing in Thurso. It's something that's already been done in Muir of Ord, Incredible Edible in Inverness. You can find small growing spaces in different places. Donating surplus food rather than it going to landfill. Is there a community larder? Is there a community fridge near where you are? Could you donate that food rather than it going into landfill? And actually, that is then also helping within your community. Do you have a grassy area? Could you create a wildflower meadow that would help with biodiversity? More and more of these wildflower meadows are springing up. May is actually no mow May, so it might be something to consider. And then ditching disposables. So removing disposables from the supply chain. And if you're a community organisation, there's lots of different ways that you can start to embed lots of these actions in what you're doing. And I'm going to just finally end with one example of a community project that is trying to introduce sustainability and net zero. So public toilets, where would we be without public toilets? This is our public toilets in Thurso. Beautifully mural, thanks to Thurso Youth Club and our Discover Thurso Festival last year. We took over operation of these public toilets in 2019. They then remained shut for quite a long period of time due to COVID-19. But that enabled us to make various improvements into the toilets. Now, this is not perfect. There is much more that we need to do with these public toilets to make them more environmentally friendly. But we've started with the energy is sourced from 100% renewable supplier. We only use eco-cleaning materials within the toilets. We don't use any disposables which are not biodegradable. So obviously we have gone through COVID. We need to provide volunteers with gloves for cleaning. It's a public toilets, but we make sure that we're using biodegradable ones. We have fitted light centres to reduce the energy usage within those toilets. So the lights only come on when you open the door. This year, we'll be introducing a beach cleaning station next to them. The papers that are used within the toilets are only from recycled paper. We're looking now at ways of, so as I said, this is not perfect, but we have a policy, we have a plan that sits around these toilets, as in, can we now go and install solar panels on them that we can actually be producing energy ourselves for the toilets, because they require very little energy. It's just a small public toilets. And how do we start to look at that? How do we reduce some of the water usage that's in it? But one of the key things that we also do with these toilets is on the signs on the door. These are actually, I've just realised I've used a photo that still has the temporary signs on it, but there are permanent signs on the door now, which tell people that that's what we're doing. Because actually most of our consumers for tourism now, particularly I would feel if they're traveling the North Highlands and Islands, they're actually, there's a reason that they're coming here and they're looking for that kind of environmental sustainability. You know, we're almost talking about there being a green pound, and we've used that as those toilets are wholly run on donations, and actually us very much advertising the fact that we are trying to be environmentally sustainable with them, that we are trying to make a difference with them, that we are trying to reach net zero through them. That also helps us to attract donations to them. And that's one of the key aspects of people who are traveling to this area. They're kind of looking for that localism. They're looking for that kind of approach to things. They may not always respect the public toilets, but we can only just keep on trying our best. And that's, I think, me. I haven't actually done a slide which says about how you can get in contact with us, but I'll pop that into the chat.
Thank you very much, Joan. No, that was like really insightful, I think, because we have quite a few community representatives on the call today. So, you know, from a point of view of communities and businesses, and what you said about like encouraging collaboration and connecting to, you know, help make those small changes that make a big difference. I think that was really insightful. And if there is things that people want to know more about, or is there particular topics that you think, you know, you'd like covered that we could do another thing like this on, then please, you know, just let us know. But no, thank you very much, Joan, for that. So now we're going to move on to, I forgot to mention the reason that David hasn't managed to come along is because the Wi-Fi in the chamber has gone down, so he can't actually get online. But we'll move on now to Dr. Laura Hamlet, who is from the North West Highlands Geopark. She's the manager there, and she's probably going to talk a bit about the Geopark and their own responsible and sustainable tourism messaging. So I'll let Laura take over.
Thanks very much, Kirsty. I'll just share my slides. Hopefully that's all working fine for everyone.
I can see that.
Great, so thanks so much for inviting me along to talk today. This is a subject very close to my heart. What does sustainable tourism look like for the North West Highlands Geopark? So really quickly, what are we? What is the Geopark? Where is it? There's a model that UNESCO have set up, which means that territories that become UNESCO Global Geoparks must have this significant geological heritage, but they've also got to have a structure and a management plan. And there are 4 fundamental features of geoparks there, and the top 10 focus areas that we all have to contribute to. And you can see climate change is one of those. So across the world, there's lots of different models for geoparks. There's no one set model that you have to follow governance-wise. But in the North West Highlands Geopark, we are a charity. So the charity's vision is for the North West Highlands to be a thriving and sustainable rural economy, capitalising on the natural assets and people of the geopark in partnership with local government, relevant agencies and local businesses. We love working with people. And there is a map of the area, so you can see where we're talking about. So this place is the UNESCO Global Geopark, and that has the designation, and it's the charity that manages the UNESCO status. So we're very much reliant on the activities of others, and then we report on those to UNESCO, and that's how we maintain UNESCO status for the North West Highlands. It has to be revalidated every 4 years. So tourism in the geopark. The North West Highlands Geopark was set up in 2004 actually by the Sutherland Partnership, and it achieved its European geopark status as the first in Scotland. And at the time, in 2005, the management plan said that sustainable socio-economic development driven by tourism was the main reason for the geopark. And when we kind of move through the years, we're very much talking about how tourism is the catalyst for sustainable development, and we want to increase the volume and value of tourism to the area. But once we start getting a little bit further into the kind of current situation, we're very much finding that responsible tourism and sustainable tourism is very much the focus. So our business plan that was written in 2020 states that the charity is not a tourism management organisation and is not responsible for developing tourism strategy or the promotion of tourism in the geopark area. So it's quite an interesting shift. So here's the figures from the STEAM report that show you the number of visitors to the geopark and its connecting areas, so Ullapool's included in there. And you can see, so it's a bit of an odd picture, it kind of moves up and down. So I can't explain this, we need to get the guys from STEAM along to explain it, but you can see that there is a general trend upwards. And so that has had an effect on the communities. So we were given some funding by Nature Scott in 2021 to look at the situation in the geopark. It was called the Groundwork for Slow Tourism project. There's a link up there, I can put that in the chat, or I can share my slides after this if you want to go and read more about it. But essentially we were able to buy the visitor number volume statistics right back from 2010 up until 2019 as part of that project. And we did some research with the community in Downess around Smoo Cave and the impacts of tourism on the community and how the community feel. Because we know that in order for tourism to become sustainable, it has to work for the people, the environment and the economy. So as part of that project, we held a stakeholder workshop to speak to as many members of our community as possible. And Joan explained a little bit about what we mean by community. I very much identify with that too. And we also were able to review the visitor management activities in the geopark. And there were 6 recommendations that came out of that, and I've summarised them there. There's a bit more detail in the actual report. But essentially, we wanted to share the results of the consultation with the relevant stakeholders in Highland Council and with the Downess community so that it could inform future projects for everybody. And also that the geopark should be considered as a discrete destination within the Highlands and within Sutherland, and we've managed to create a great relationship with Venture North as a result. And The Geopark should coordinate a heritage and science tourism working group with local stakeholders, so that's something that we're looking to do in the future. And also the Geopark management body should offer to participate in destination management work. So off the back of this research project, essentially, that we conducted, we then moved into the education and enjoyment project, which again was funded by Nature Scott through the Better Places Fund. And that built on those recommendations. And from the consultation that we did with the communities and understanding some of the issues, especially around the Durness area, we were able to create a touring guide to the Northwest Highlands Geopark, which has all the information that people need when they're touring around the area to make more responsible decisions. We also had an interactive version of this on the Geopark's website for all the hotspots that were identified within the Geopark, so that people could go to one place to find up-to-date information on all of the bits and pieces that visitors need to make those responsible decisions when they're visiting an area. We were also able to employ Fraser, which was the Geopark ranger based purely in Durness, to support the communities there and to welcome visitors to the region and give them little information packs and poo kits to again help them consider their impact on the environment and on the community in Durness, and consider how they might be able to make more responsible decisions during their visit. As part of this project, we were also able to actually create some bike racks for Smoo Cave, because there is a huge problem with traffic and traffic congestion around the cave. And so encouraging people to get on their bikes, especially from the big campsite just down the road, and bike down to the cave to visit it rather than driving down. We thought this is a great way to just show that we're really wanting to welcome cyclists to the cave. So in conjunction with the Highland Council, we were able to install these with our Better Places funding. Other tools that we use to manage and encourage more sustainable tourism to the area, we have a sense of place toolkit that was developed by the communities. So this is a more kind of grassroots approach to communicating what it's like in our region. So our sense of place toolkit that we have at the moment is for Coigach and Assynt, but we're hoping to extend that to the northern end of the Geopark as well. And this essentially allowed the communities the space to talk about what's special about the area, what we want to protect and look after, and what we want to tell people about. And so that's then used for a whole range of local business stakeholders, but also anyone that's developing any kind of interpretation, funding applications, all that kind of thing, communicating what the area is like to people that don't live in the area. And an example of that in use is the Coigach and Assynt Walkers Guide, which was another output of one of our projects here. And that built on that messaging that the community put together to create a guidebook for visitors. And it's also fed into the Local Guide mobile phone app, which is about to be launched in the next couple of weeks, which is again interesting stories of the landscape for people as they're touring around, to slow them down, encourage them to get out of the car and go for a walk. And as part of this as well, we've worked with Visit Scotland on the UNESCO National Trail for Scotland, which again is an initiative to try and encourage people to really think and be mindful about their travel arrangements and their reasons for visiting areas. So we want anyone that comes to the Northwest Highlands to really go in deep and get to know the landscape and really understand how it's become the way it is, and to have that kind of transformational experience of connecting to something that's so much bigger than themselves. So again, the link's there for the website, so you can explore that at your leisure. And looking to the future, building on the work that we've done over the last couple of years with the Education and Enjoyment Project and the Groundwork for Slow Tourism Project, we're now developing ACT Geopark, which is Access, Connect, Take Part. So our access projects are very much around allowing people to access our interpretation, but also the landscape. So can we make improvements to the paths in the Geopark that will allow more people to be able to use them? And also thinking about getting people onto the water as well. The Connect aspect of the programme is all about marine heritage, Pilgrim's Trail, and encouraging businesses and other organisations to collaborate. And then the Take Part is that deeper level of interaction with the landscape. So this is where we're hoping to be able to resource an artist in residence, expand that sense of place work to the northern end of the geopark, and establish more sort of youth projects to really enrich what's on offer in the schools. And that includes a Young Geologist Club, which would be available nationally for any young people that are really into rocks and stuff, because most young people are, let's face it. So the outcome of that project then is, well, that programme is that more people and new audiences can better explore, enjoy and understand the landscape and its stories in ways which engage communities and support the local economy. So that's really everything that I wanted to whiz through today. I'm sure there's, again, it's another kind of whistle-stop tour of everything that's going on here, but I'm very happy to take the discussion further and answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you very much, Laura. That was really good. I think it's good to hear examples of what other places are doing and, you know, what people can adopt and implement to kind of start climate and sustainable action. I appreciate that everyone here did the kind of a whistle-stop tour of what each of them do, what the organisations do. But if anyone on the call has things that they kind of want to explore further, then by all means reach out to us and let us know, because this is just the start of the kind of events that we're going to be holding. So it would be good to know what you guys kind of want to focus on and what's important to each and every one of you. Yeah, so at this point, I want to open it up for questions, but I also want to let Kathy and Elsa feedback in if they have anything that they want to say. But no, I just want to say thank you very much to the speakers today. It was really, really good, even if it was quite quick. But no, I appreciate you guys coming along today.
I'll just jump in just very quickly to say thank you very much to everybody, but also I've not had any word from David, unfortunately, so it does sound like the Chamber of Commerce is still without their Wi-Fi or internet or whatever technical problems they're having. And I think right across the region, all of us will appreciate how much, especially these days, we rely on that, and actually as a region, as a Highland region, you know, how dependent we are on connectivity. So I don't think he's going to join us. So for the team, we could probably stop recording and open up for questions.